Association annual convention got taguhti og michato ta the trappers so yeah mi got sa president utan wi sa pawistag so nanahni here ano mat throughout the day so yeah we patski sipa we just had breakfast here so a little update kami go no ista a berry carrier we is president o taw nagawi taguhti ki we gawi ay mutsa tigi go tama so good morning ka kiogi o ano sumagana na to tamik and yeah good midday na gaitana nakafito ego tiwa heo mina na to tam ayop se sika tio ego muta taga pina na to tamik so yeah I'm with here with Barry Carrier this morning and there is the AGM that'll be happening also tomorrow and yeah he'll fill us in today as a matter of fact today Barry Carrier is the president Matisa we'll hear from Barry so Barry kiwe no stay kam gano muto mat throughout the day and tomorrow.
Good morning, Chaboy. At pegi chayo, pegi tuten pe tagusta no tayo, pe tapmia kat at semino sita kayo with our Indigenous Harvester'S Association that we just got incorporated ayo sigan oak, so everything is moving fast ayo forward ayo at the sigapa yak and we have a bunch of trappers coming in here from the north. Mamop yak notes we had to call an AGM because we have a lawyer in place now, Katuskagawak for the grassroots movement that we're moving forward with it Nigan. And it's been a lot of work and stay you and magwits and kage go say and pamamop yan and mineni tenekaskita na you and nigans kamano tayo moma this organization ago instead to skin but you know what we'll get there. Today we're going to be introducing our lawyer from BC that did the blueberry case. So we're pretty happy to announce that today. We'll make a motion. Kamas na igea. So muna mi nakata katipamo ak miso winayo kagiskeni tam tantakla tu se pansuni asutet nigan with the industries that's affecting us. So mistake on case panu today ago. We got a few speakers, a few guests coming in. We have the Métis president, Glenn McCullum here, our chief, Reddy Savoyer. We have a representation from FSIN, the newly elected Fabian Ed Tagustin. So, and a lot of people from the south and the north, far north, right from Stony Rapids, Tagustinok, and Mr. Mineni, then pay with Tapmigwa kayo to make this AGM come alive again here at the old Marlboro Win. You know, this is where it all started when the Ninguskinig no tanis tagi pay Pawitsiak no Anagupapa and Jim Carrier Kisniga. So he was the president of the NSTA back then. So I mean, then katitapip mo tatama nagupapa na yung utatuske nago maskus nagisita niyo when magimatsia pinigets ko elders they're gone now and you know I can suppose na ito naganiatuskoy ninyo tinibina na ko gatuskoy ko makati sa minupanikin na our province and you know if we work together ginawan kami minupan yo and kiopak na ya na you the fur table from 9 o'clock till 5 p.m. We have 3 fur buyers coming in, so bring in your fur with the PA, Kistapinani, and Pegwigek, and that's what it's all about. And you know, Kayasma, Kigiminanitana, no, Pamigwigatwa, Kiachimwak, and Mamish Christmas Ice Panik, you know. So this is the time and place to come and visit and share your stories in the past. And as we move forward with our lawyer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right behind us here, Utawista. Wow, they've been here. Sa situ man nagayah tu tagiya. Okay, we start to tamiwis tamaga absis at tayo mo maya ho.
Yeah, K and J Northern First Stretchers. They're from Nipwin, based out of Nipwin, and they've been around with us for a long time now. About how many years? They're a lot of. Kinesisa associate ni pamichigo na so niminete na yo that we have them on our side, you know, and they have a great display of the traps kaganoge when go see se apoya anapia tawage yo Jeremy no tandop mau mistena na tuke go na tawage yo Martin sayaw what do you call those Martin Martin Lures ni gata mo kayo kaya tayo mo na kaganoge go na tawage yo kan atita even ataya tawage yo yeah and snares waniga na so pay to tek peta we kute you know and sabi nagitom na an AGM in April we'll give you an update what we're going to be doing you know as we move forward within the next few months. We have our constitution right now at the Scatamak. We're going to review that in January. And and we'll go from there. So, that's about it for now.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, Barry Carrier you're gonna so tamats pa pix go ista oguta so ni ste go timati sanati to tan so ga pistina ogi we ga it is chimuchik. So yeah, we'll be hearing some of the dignitaries here this morning. As we can hear there, the president you're gonna we are to pia with the senator as to minuta this morning we start Roy had say tago Barry Carrier is the one I just spoke to. Yeah, throughout the day so tatama go the head table go tigop tama ay ga papistana nagmati sa tan sa tagip ne itu check sweet you chugit tago check maybe we'll have a chance here with Rick we start tago the mayor of Bovella with a few words here just before we go into the panel minuti. So good morning Rick tansato yanos.
Minä on tosi voi, että minä kohti joku, että huppa higiok. And tänne minä sinne pin tohta manu manista, ja pin skuhta manu, tega mä moope. And kajas vitsi vaga nak papa mio, suisto that John Carrier di Cumberland House ohse. Tahtaga gaat se muog mi gots, but pin tohta manu ma tan sigo visita suito tan se huppa higi on et ispäig, but mingats huppa higi, aga tsko ma aski kapatsihta to aski uinu akta gitu ako magahju pagtaho en maatsi uen ahju maskihkia mu sahen aga po mitsuen ga mamsi tutta mahaski gunuma ja kui sipitsin tohta manista tan se sipis se he sino akta is ma mo toski akta is ma mo sitos kautta ako magi vitno.
Ja, minä olen sinut tumikin tapahtumaan just a few of the we stod mahkana Gepessayan. There's going to be the Métis Nation, Glenn McCallum, which is a seta gohtiu, MLTC minuta tagea, so a variety of leaders minutea, tene minä sen plaskista the mayor, tene so Scott ipa hamaya goiski upikuhtsi joglo, yön minä putan tuhtawa ahmena.
Yeah, Ego Manistega Pintohtaman, I guess on behalf of the northern village of Beauval, Nistanan, we're a traditional cultural community, and the land users are very critical to our past, our history, but it's also as development comes into our communities, into our neighborhoods, logging, mining, the policies of the province. And this is now the time to understand where the traditional land users stand and how we can support as northern leaders. And it's good to see the chiefs and Métis leaders have come here to lend their support and continue to advocate for a traditional lifestyle, but also to transfer that knowledge to our young people.
All right, thank you there, Rick. Utigo mahtisa we all go to sa ayotini gan tohtino.
Very much here because we are. This is our first go round here for the Indigenous Harvesters, but from my point of view, I have enjoyed being beside Barry, working hard with him. We've spent a lot of time together, many calls early in the morning, back and forth, how to do this, when to do this, where to go, how to do about it. We spent a lot of time again calling chiefs, delegates everywhere, who to come, who to invite, and when to hold this event. We've had a few dates set out, but we decided today, December, because December is a time of family to get together, and it gives our trappers the opportunity to come and sell their fur. At the same time, close to Christmas, they can go to the city, Walmart, their favorite places to do their shopping for their loved ones. But with that, let's begin with the opening prayer. Senator Roy Head, would you please?
Good morning. No, good morning to all. This wonderful morning, wonderful gathering. See a lot of new faces and old friends, and hope you'll enjoy this gathering today and tomorrow. Hello. My name is Roy Head from Redwood. I'm a senator for, first of all, for Redwood Cree Nation. I was senator before I became senator for Grand Council. I'm also an elder in the community and clergy in our community, lay reader, and in different boards and committees. So with that, I will set the prayer for this gathering today. And ask Commandment to will thank God for this new day and this wonderful day and gathering today. I know a lot of you people travel from quite a distance to be here, and enjoy your stay in PA for next today and tomorrow. And I'll thank the organizers for organizing this, and Barry and doing for this, and the committee here. And somehow bow our heads and bow your heads, and you start saying in your own language, in your own way. You say, stop with the make that you want to pray. I'm going to pray in Cree. I'm time, I'm trying. And also, the stem I got to Lord God. If my tapos on this God, type on none of his story, pace moved out, I pace match you to go mutum. What's the asking I would match it to be skisa. I go sit down, I get what I get skiing, I get skisik. I get on the music. We come before you, Lord God, in your circle of creation, Lord God, in the last commit tag. In the circle of life, Lord God, for all the things that you created the life on land, plants, trees, water, every living thing that you have that we use in our daily life, Lord. Ancestors, we start. I basic Matthew, Lord God, we thank you for that. And continue this way of life, trapping, living off the land, or we're the land, in the land. Last comment I see some stay of pay me that was great blessings. For he gives land to live off, to live in. Our ancestors say peace meat. So, and last come I don't say this. Pinag-skat to yoy ni, yoy tamoy ni, sagi way ni mina. Look after our families as we leave them behind back home. Stop yatik them yatik. You know those that are homeless. So I was yatik kayat sagi somewhat. Thank all that are here, Kunigani of this any council members that are here, their families. Lord, we thank you. Amen. Something wrong with the mic doesn't like me.
Hello, hello, hello. Hello. Thank you, Senator. Senator has been behind us 100% with this new organization. Senator Head is also very a father-in-law, so he's got a lot of knowledge, gained a lot of wisdom through him. So our next guy here we are gonna call forward is a man. He had a dream since he was a young guy. You know, he had to be a man at the age of 14, living off the land. His dad left him a lodge. He had to grow up, talk to his mom. No, his mom, dad gave me this lodge and all these to look after. And so he tried school, but school wasn't forte, but living off the land was his way of life. And Indigenous Harvesters is our way of life. And so Barry traveled to different locations, working, and but he never forgot his roots. He always came back. He always came back to home, to Cumberland, and that's where he wanted to see. He wanted to see his people succeed. By succeeding, he wanted our grassroots people to. I think these mics don't like us. Hello, hello. Testing. Ah, there we go. Yes, Barry has wears a lot of hats. He's always constantly on his phone. I travel everywhere. Uh, he's always visiting people. He knows a lot of guys. He knows a lot of women. He knows a lot of people. Yes, yeah. I have to learn to be patient. So I finally learned to be patient and sit back, let him do his thing. Uh, so Barry has a vision. He wants to. He wants this Indigenous Harvesters to go a long ways for the people, because that's what his future is going to be, is for the people. But I'd like to call up Barry Carrier, our president of Indigenous Harvesters Association. There you go. Hey. Testing. Testing. Wait. I guess I'll speak in my words first. And not so much Roy. I'll speak just like that. I want to thank Roy, having starting off with a wonderful prayer. And I'm asking Roy for the support you've been all the way from the start. I know I have a long road ahead of me, and but with your help, but anyways, I want to say good morning to each and every one of you here this morning. I have a lot of people here that come from far and wide, up north, La Loche, Stony Rapids, South End, and we even have a few people from the south, which I'm very pleased to see. And of course, we have our Métis Nation President Glenn McCullum here to support us. He's been a friend. I've met him about 5 years ago, and ever since then, 5-6 years ago now, I met him at a golf course, and that's how our relation started. Ever since then, he's been there, supporting the Indigenous Harvesters. At that time, it was NSTA, Northern Saskatchewan Trappers Association, based on trapping. Today, Indigenous Harvesters Association is based on hunting, trapping, fishing, and gathering. I've been saying that for the last 6 months, I believe, and it's been a non-stop. And of course, I want to talk a little bit about my chief. He's been very supportive of this organization right from the get-go. Matter of fact, he was the one that nominated me to run for this position. And before that, I was just a board member, and he came there. He supported our organization then. And him and I have been talking back and forth, what can we do to make things better for our people? So he has a strong vision. Our chief is young, but working with your chief side by side along the way, the people that you believe in, the friends that you have, today you see it. You see it here on the floor today. You know, you have a lot of friends out there. You meet a lot of friends. But today I know where I stand, you know, where the help is going to come from. You know, I just want to bring that out, you know, the support that you have, you know, from FSI. And too, we have newly elected Fabian Head, Chief Fabian Head from Red Earth Cree Nation, from Treaty 5 territory. And that's where I'm from, is Treaty 5 territory. And I'm proud to be from our territory, you know, Treaty 5. And we're part of Manitoba, half of Manitoba, I believe. So we're just a little section in Saskatchewan. But you know what? This is my home in Saskatchewan. This is where I do the work for our people. And you know, this is a good job for me. 2 years ago, I stepped down from work. You know, I had this vision. Growing up in our way of life, trapping, commercial fishing, gathering, guiding, hunting. That was my way of life. That was planted in my head when I was just a kid. Dad passed on when I was 13. And, you know, I had to step up to be a man at that time. And mom, we had nothing. You know, all we had was a beautiful camp, beautiful commercial fishing camp, everything, trap line. The education was there. I went to school, and Dad had a vision for us to all to graduate, you know, to finish school. But for me, that seed was already planted in my mind that I wanted to be a trapper, a commercial fisherman, living the way of life. And I'm glad I did that. You know, my mom wasn't very proud of me when I stepped out of school at grade 10, and I said, Mom, I can't do it. I looked at my will, I showed my will to my mother, and I said, look at what I have here. I have to look after you, Mom. And you know what? I'm glad I made that right choice of growing up and living off the land. I started very young. We had nothing, you know, and but I made friends along the way. One of my best friends is here today, you know, and he's been with me, you know, all this time, and he's still here. And if I want to introduce him, his name is Rod. Stand up, Rod. I want to tell you a story about me and him. We're about 6 hours apart, so he's my best friend, my brother, you know, and everything else. He's my right-hand man. So he's been there for me all these years, so I can't forget about that guy because he's been there with me all the way. So with that, we have an agenda here that we have to follow, and you know, I'll speak a little more later on as we go. But I wanted to introduce our lawyer too as well. You know, he's here, and we have that coming. We're going to make a motion later on through the stuff, and but the most of all, I want to, you know, I want to say gratitude, a big gratitude to my chief Rennie Saboyer for supporting me. Even this place we have here, you know, he stepped up to the plate. Barry, you need to bring it back to the old Marlborough Inn. And you know what? Ever since then, we've been coming back here. We used to have the AGM in Laurens, but there's not too many rooms, hotels over there, and it's hard for us to go there. Of course, the money is hard. But, you know, with my vision, I think we will have something in the near future, you know, and as we move forward, because, you know, when I stepped out from, you know, from the construction world to go home and, you know, to make a commitment for your, you know, for your people of the North, the elders, you know, the children, the youth, and everything else that goes along with, you know, the people of the North. You know, the grassroots movement started, but it always stopped. So when I made that commitment, when I came back home from BC, I said, you know what? I'm done. I'm going to go represent my people. And I'm going to finish my job. You know, with this job that I have, I knew it was going to be a lot of curves ahead of me. I knew it was going to be hard. But you know what? When you have a vision for your people, things will line up. You know, Dwayne and I were traveling from Cumberland one evening, and I swear we saw Elon Musk's lights, the Starlink, but it wasn't. It was 8 stars that lined up just like that in a line. I couldn't believe it. We stopped, and there was other people that stopped, and I said, is that Elon Musk? I said, no, it was 8 stars that lined up right in front of us as we were driving the nights. We took pictures of it. So I think that relates to this drive that I have today. You know, to see something like that, I know it's in my heart because I don't know. It must be the hate symbols. There's 8 of us here in our board, you know. To see those 8 stars is something to, you know, to certainly think, that's something that was meant for me to see. I knew my road is going to be tough. There's going to be a lot of challenges ahead of me, but, as we move forward with the government, with our impacts and whatever that's happening, we have to stand together. With that, that's the biggest thing I need to do. And but I'll speak a little bit more later on. But I wanted to acknowledge I have a big construction company. It's called Nations Constructors, and my team members are over there on that side. You guys want to stand up? Mark, and Steve. They're from British Columbia. They invested on my company to make things work for our construction, and they're going to be paying they're going to be picking up our tab here in the hotel, for some of the stuff that for the elders that stayed here from the far north, So I want to say thank you guys for that support. And I guess I'll hand over this little mic to Ray to speak a little bit about what transpired from me and him.
Hi, my name is Raymond Saboyer, Cumberland House at Tidnina. And I'm not much of a trapper, go with the mat now. But I'm here to support our President Barry Carrier and what he's trying to do to tatipay sa government and industry. Niguga penswanachita and everything, from land to water. Kaginagayon sa when we need to bring that back, restore all of that back into what it was. Nista ni minenita into being out there in the wild, egosko pichigian and all of that. My heart's all in that. Magayo, the main thing is, let's hear what the lawyer has to tell us, and you be the judge if we're doing the right thing or not. With the Maygak, after the lawyer has explained to all of us what we're trying to accomplish here, I could tell you there'll be question and answers with Tamuinan if we're going on the right path or not. Thank you. Egosibari.
Thank you, Elder Ray. Elder Ray is a wise man. He was there beside us, traveling to Winnipeg and everywhere that we could go. And thanks again, Ray. Our next individual is a very huge supporter of our Indigenous Harvesters Association. We can't thank him enough. He's done a lot, making sure that we get from A to B and are financially stable from getting there and here. Chief Ray H. Boyer, please stand up. Next.
Everybody. Thank you, Roy, for the opening prayer and the blessing. First Nations people, we often start our day in a good way. Prayer, do that everywhere we go, or out there. I want to say that I'm thankful to be given the opportunity to come and speak here in front of you. I was here last year and we only filled up half the room here, but I see that this event is growing, which is a good thing. We must support each other at all levels of government. Today, I'd like to announce that the words that I offer you come based just on my nation and my nation alone, on the people that I represent and the territory that we often occupy, Treaty 5, coming out Saskatchewan. we are also fighting against the governments on many levels. First, I want to touch on the structures that are on the Saskatchewan River, Nipwin Dam, Camel Dam. Ever since those structures were put in place, they've been affecting our people's ability to hunt, trap, fish, navigate safely on the waterways. Year by year, deteriorating quickly. So the fight on that piece is the licenses, the illegal licenses that they're utilizing to continue operating the water flows that come to the delta. So we kind of predicted what would occur. The provincial court, well, obviously we weren't going to win there. We appealed, right? Go up to the King's Bench. So right now we're still waiting for a decision to come. If we don't get the decision in our favor, then of course we'll appeal, go to the Superior Court, where we think we will ultimately get the right in our favor. So right now we're in litigation, going into deep waters. A lot of First Nations fail and give up because a lot of times they can't afford to keep going now. But we're in a position to keep that fight going. What we're looking at is revoking those 2 illegal licenses from those dams. Get organizations and the government to come back to the Cree Nation, get consultation from the First Nation. Not only that, but ask us for our consent to continue operating moving forward. That's one small file that we're working on. Kind of connected to the next file that I want to kind of give you insight on what we're doing. By now, around these tables, you've probably heard a little bit about the blueberry cake. How they fought, won. Now they're in a position of power and control their territory. So that is what the Common House Cree Nation is seeking and working towards. Just recently we served the provincial government. Our position from our lawyer, a document stating how we want to either settle and negotiate or fight with them right up to the Supreme Court. We're calling it the treaty infringement case because our inability to hunt, trap, fish, navigate, harvest medicine, manage and protect the fish, the birds, the animals, and don't have a voice. All these things, the quality of water, the lack of sediment, provides what our people have always depended on to keep our culture alive. That's what those structures are killing, and ultimately our people's culture. And Delta, one of 3 the world, the largest in North America. We're stepping out of the Indian Act box, fight the right of our traditional area. Might take 5 years, take a year. We've already served the provincial government what our intent is. I believe what we're doing and what the trappers and the group behind me is equivalent. So of course I'll support them at any level. Continue support them moving forward. I believe FSIN stand side by side, fight. So that's what we're about, Common House Nation. Try to save what's left. I don't want to save what's left, but gain back control moving forward to try and manage, save the entire delta. The delta was ever to dry up, release the largest carbon bomb the world has ever seen. That delta acts as the world's lungs, pulls all that pollution in. We often talk a little bit about global warming. Well, we must save the world by saving the delta. Superheated carbon. Comments I make here are mine and mine alone. So with that, I can't say any more, too much. Legal battles. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Thank you, sir.
All right. Right on, Chief. Thank you.
Testing, mic testing 1, 2, 3, testing 1.
Thank you, thank you. What? Thank you, Chief Renee Boyer from Cumberland House First Nation. Next, we have a lawyer who is will be joining the newly formed organization, Indigenous Harvester's Association. Our lawyer is from British Columbia. Kurt Harms is a lawyer from Ferris LLP, a Vancouver firm who pride themselves in practical and meaningful legal solutions. Before law, Curtis had a background in engineering and he enjoys collaborative work. Curtis is part of a team at Ferris that has 20-year history of assisting First Nations on various projects and initiatives to represent Indigenous rights and with the goal of First Nations economic self-determination. So please let's welcome Curtis.
Figure this out then. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, everyone. We're just going to try to get this projector back on, but I really want to first of all thank the elders, the chiefs, and particularly Barry for inviting me to come join you today. This is an incredible gathering. I didn't expect it to be this large, so I'm really appreciative to be here. And I don't want to just speak today, but also to listen. So I'm going to speak about a few things in a moment, if we can get this working. Turn on for a second. Perfect. So my name is Curtis Harms. I am from Ferris, which is a regionally prominent full-service law firm of about 100 professionals based out of Vancouver. And we first became involved in First Nations work, project-based work, about 15 to 20 years ago. And we have seen that through proper partnerships, we can achieve really wonderful results for First Nations through economic self-determination and respectful use of land. Now you might be asking, why is someone from British Columbia here to speak today? For whatever reason, a lot of the positive developments of First Nations and projects and partnerships have evolved more quickly, it seems to us, in British Columbia. Perhaps that's because there are fewer treaties in British Columbia, and so there's been more case law coming out of British Columbia. And we also have had somewhat progressive governance, perhaps, compared to Saskatchewan. But for whatever reasons, that being the case, Saskatchewan is catching up and quickly becoming a source for many different initiatives. And that's what I really wanted to talk to you about today. The law is evolving very quickly in this area, and we think there's really strong opportunities for you to pursue, and we'll get into that further in a minute. Obviously, if you talk to anyone from 40, 50 years ago, but I'm also hearing these stories almost every day today, there's a really destructive legacy of projects and the use of lands impacting First Nations and your lands. The impacts were resulting from contaminated sites in your lands. The impacts resulted from oil pipeline spills, pulp mills and the effluents, destroying fish habitats, hydroelectric dams destroying villages and traditional hunting grounds without any consent or any consultative process followed. And then uranium mining, the radioactive tailings from that, which I'm sure you've had experience with. And then at the end of almost all these projects, there's been many broken promises about land reclamation and making sure the lands are restored to what they were. So I think it's fair to say there's a strong legacy of mistrust from that irresponsible resource development. That has led many communities to this day to oppose all forms of development, understandably. And if that's how you feel, the approach, the legal resolution for that is litigation and protest. And that's an avenue of law that is not what I specialize in. That involves litigators and title lawyers. And I understand at least some of the nations here have lawyers who work in that area. The downside of that is that it can be expensive and time consuming. And it doesn't always stop projects, because the duty to consult, as I'll speak to in a minute, is not a veto right. Other First Nations in British Columbia have pursued, or at least some of them have pursued, development, but on their own terms, partnering with proponents who pursue projects, but insisting on certain benefits, rights, respect for their land, and importantly, how the project is run throughout its life. And for those nations, they sometimes see upside overall to pursuing these partnerships and projects, and as an opportunity for economic self-sufficiency. So just to give you a brief history of the last 50 years at a very 40,000 foot level, prior to the 1970s, there was little or no consideration for the impact of Indigenous culture and lands. And in fact, prior to 1951, there was some abhorrent provisions in the Indian Act which barred First Nations from being represented by a lawyer. So the first developments that we saw on this front were really 1973 is the earliest point, when there was first federal environmental assessment legislation passed, which was the first foot in the door, so to speak, to respecting lands. And then in 1974, the Calder Supreme Court of Canada decision recognized Aboriginal title, but this was pre-charter. So the charter came in 1982 and enshrined Section 35, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with. And that's really the pivotal point in recent history where Indigenous rights and title really were properly spoken about and recognized. And I'll speak about the history since then a little bit further too. So, there's been many cases over the years. I'm not going to speak about all the cases. And I'm not, as I mentioned, I'm not a litigator. But the 2004 Haida Nation Supreme Court of Canada decision was pivotal because it talked about the duty to consult. And this is really the basis upon which we looked at a lot of these partnership opportunities and on what terms should projects be pursued on Indigenous lands. So that decision said that the federal and provincial governments have a duty to consult First Nations whenever they're taking actions that could impact Aboriginal rights and title and treaty rights. The other decision that I'm just going to highlight for you is the 2021 Blueberry decision that came out of British Columbia, and this was talked about briefly earlier. And this was a really pivotal case because it involved a treaty nation. As I mentioned, BC doesn't have as many treaty nations, but this involved a Blueberry Nation, which is a treaty nation. And the case held that you had to look at the cumulative impact of the Crown's actions throughout the years that in that case had resulted in them issuing permits left and right and not consulting properly with the treaty nations, and in effect, at the end of it, not respecting their treaty rights. And so that was, in that case, they found the Crown had unlawfully breached the treaty rights, and it had led to setting up 2 different funds for that First Nation, revoking certain permits, and a bunch of other impacts overall that are still part of ongoing discussions. So when it comes to projects, over the last 20 years, one of the main things we've seen develop, at least out of BC, is the negotiation of impact benefits agreements. So these are private contracts between the First Nation or First Nations and the project proponents who lead and develop these projects or want to develop these projects. And it's a way to recognize these projects are being developed on Indigenous land and to mitigate those adverse impacts before the project gets started. It's also a way to agree and formalize the consultative process. So this is addressing the duty to consult and to not, but on the flip side, the First Nation as part of these impact benefits agreements is agreeing to not delay the project or block it as long as the contractual commitments for the duty to consult and respecting the lands and implementing in a responsible manner are met. So it's a way for both sides to try to achieve a positive result. And we see it as becoming, it has become a very common approach. Another development I'll briefly talk about is the next step beyond that, which is equity ownership. That's where the First Nation, in fact, owns part of the project, sometimes even a majority stake in the project. So that's an even enhanced level of involvement that really gives you a seat at the table to talk about and manage and make sure these projects are implemented on your terms. So just talking about the duty to consult a little bit further. As I mentioned, it really arises from Section 35 of the Canadian Charter of Rights. It's a requirement for a consultative process to ensure protection of your Section 35 rights for Aboriginal title and etc. And it's triggered whenever there's an action of the federal or provincial government for environmental assessment, issuance of a permit. In other words, there's almost no project that doesn't trigger this duty. Now, the strength or the nature of the duty to consult depends on a few things. And principally, it depends on the strength of the claim of the Aboriginal right. So, for example, does the First Nation can demonstrate exclusive occupancy since the date the province first joined Canada is one aspect that a court might look at. And the degree of infringement of the proposed government action. So what does the project or permit or environmental license entail, and how would it infringe those rights? And it's kind of a practical aspect of that. The proximity and location of the project is an important consideration when you're talking about what constitutes the duty to consult and what does that entail for the particular First Nation. Now, the duty to consult is an obligation of the federal and provincial government, but in practical terms, the project proponents have a really important role in this process. And in many cases, the governments often push down the duty onto the project proponents to really make sure the background work is done and that they've talked to you and that they've worked with you before the government, issues a permit or does not. And part of that is also getting information about the project. In order to be able to carry out the duty to consult, you have to make an informed decision. So that means you have all the necessary information at your hands. But it goes beyond the duty to consult from HIDA, the HIDA decision. And this really comes from two different places. The 2015 report of Truth and Reconciliation Commission, outlined many important calls to action, and basically said we should go beyond the duty to consult as outlined in the HIDA case. And in 2021, Canada adopted the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And as you may have heard, in BC, we are in the process of implementing that. But it's already been implemented federally too. So that is a really important development, and it goes beyond the duty to consult from the HIDA decision. So as I mentioned, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report, 94 calls to action, it's a much broader framework than just the basic duty to consult. And it involves recognition of the harms done on all of your peoples and the proactive steps we need to take to address that. But then UNDRIP, or the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, it really sets a higher standard of free, informed prior consent. This is not a veto, but it is a threshold that goes beyond consultation. And as I mentioned, it's now part of federal law, and it's being implemented at the provincial level in certain provinces too. So when we've worked on, if a nation decides that it doesn't want to oppose a project and pursue the litigation route, which as I mentioned is one approach, and instead wants to work through consultation and involvement in a project, what we've typically done is we've gotten involved at a very early stage, and one of the first things we look at is capacity. In order to engage in meaningful consultation, you have to be able to have the time and resources to sit down at the table and talk to these sophisticated proponents who are usually leading these projects. And so one of the first things we often suggest is negotiating for capacity funding that you receive from the project proponent so that you can engage in meaningful consultation. Things we look at is like, we help identify a budget of things. How much are you going to spend meeting? How much are you going to be spending doing, initial environmental reports, etc. Really pushing the proponent to involve First Nations from the very beginning of the project, not halfway through as kind of an add-on, but no, from the very beginning, that's critical. And really working on the particular cultural values of the nations that are impacted, which really can vary. So it's not a one-size-fits-all model, that's for certain. Part of consultation that we recommend is maintaining a really fulsome consultative record. That way, if things go sideways, you can potentially pursue litigation or judicial review of the decision for any permits that are issued or any environmental assessments, etc. So after the initial capacity funding, initial discussions, as I mentioned earlier, one of the things we commonly see are impact benefits agreements. And these can range from a few pages to 30 plus pages. They're contracts that usually involve large scale projects and set out all the benefits that the First Nation will receive. And these can be really tailored to the First Nation and its interests and where it sees the most value for respecting its lands and involving its members. There's about over 500 of these agreements across Canada. Many of them are in BC. And for example, the types of benefits it can provide are requirements that members of your nation are employed on the project, members or contractors of your nation are operating the project, certain thresholds are met, a certain degree of consultation and meetings, upfront cash payments to make sure that you can be involved in discussions and also just generally receive recognition for your lands. And one other aspect we really recommend is, thinking about education opportunities and opportunities for, upgrading skill sets for new opportunities for your entire nation. And so, as I mentioned, these can really vary and depend on the nation's needs and interests on a project-specific basis. Now, the next trend, and it's fairly recent, and it's partly driven by various government programs that have been rolled out the last few years, is Indigenous equity ownership of projects. I won't go into the details about the different types of funding available for this, but for example, the Canadian Infrastructure Bank, which is a federal program, has really favorable terms for up to $100 million in loans for equity ownership of projects. So when you engage in equity ownership, you're actually at the table owning part of the project. This can be a 50-50 ownership. It could be 30-70, it could be 51-49. It really depends on the project. In addition to the government funding, many of Canada's senior big banks also have Indigenous funding models available to support this type of approach. And the benefit of equity ownership is that you're more closely involved in the management of the project, because when there's meetings to decide what's going to be done, you're there as a director of the project. When there's important decisions to be made, the shareholders, which would include the First Nation, will have a right to be there and vote on it. So you'll have a much closer participation than just an impact benefits agreement, which at the end of the day is a contract where if the other side doesn't respect it, you have to go to court. This means that you're actually involved in the day-to-day decision making and therefore can really have oversight of how your lands are respected and treated. There's a whole bunch of considerations in the background in terms of how you structure this. Should it be a corporation, a limited partnership? There's different tax benefits to each. How much ownership do you want? Are there several First Nations involved? Is it just one First Nation? So those are all different variables to consider on a project-specific basis. I already talked about the different ways you can participate by being at the table through the board of directors, through management committees, etc. You also receive much more fulsome information because if you're an owner, you're entitled usually to all the information about the company and you can audit and inspect the books. And this equity ownership doesn't do away with any of the other benefits I talked about associated with impact benefits agreements. So you still can negotiate for things like, 30% of the project will involve our members to be employed. We're going to have skills and jobs training so that everyone can work on the project from our nation. Those are all things that you can still negotiate for as part of Indigenous equity ownership. So we've worked with many First Nations on this front. Usually one of the first things to discuss is how you fund it, because if you're doing equity ownership, that means you are having to inject cash in. But if you have financing available through the government, such as the CIB loans or through commercial banks, then effectively you're investing loaned money rather than necessarily your own nation's money. And we also really have to think about risk mitigation. If you are doing ownership, you have both the upsides of ownership, but also the potential downsides of ownership. Not all projects necessarily make money. So things that we would look for is, is the proponent who brings the expertise to the table to develop it and construct it, are they guaranteeing, minimum returns for you? Are they saying, we guarantee that when the project, reaches its commercial operations date, or COD, it will have these attributes and be functioning and everything, so that it's a safe investment for you? Yeah, so I just wanted to conclude. We've worked on many of these projects. We're working on several today. And we think there's lots of opportunities here coming from the BC context, which we expect would also apply in Saskatchewan, for whether it's an impact benefits agreement, whether it's equity ownership. And we think that, properly done, it can really benefit First Nations to ensure that your cultural and environmental values are respected, that the duty to consult is upheld, and that you're achieving results, meaningful results for your First Nation through jobs and employment opportunities. And so it's, bringing benefits back to your communities at the end of the day. And the long-term goal being economic self-determination while at the same time respecting all of your rights. Thank you again. I want to thank the elders again, the chiefs, the Métis, and Barry for inviting me today. And I'm happy to take any questions if you have them. Restoration cost? Well, it depends on the project in question. We've negotiated up to several $100 million of benefits for First Nations in connection with projects, but usually that's over the lifetime of the project. And then when you start these projects, in today's context, this wasn't done properly in the past, you have to make sure, this gets a little bit into the details, but you have to make sure that the project proponent is putting enough money, saving enough money on its financial statements to be prepared to actually properly reclaim the project at the end of its life. That's the critical piece. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yes, and I want to really thank you for the Métis brothers for joining us today. I'm sorry for me right at the beginning. My apologies.
On IOPS, and it's shareable. It should be recorded, right, Nathan? Recording? Yes, sir. The presentation, live programming is going to be recorded.
Mm-hmm.
It's recording right now, yeah. Then we'll share it. If
Okay.
there is no more questions, then we'll continue. Oh.
Yes. Yes, sir. I'm not Indigenous, but I work with many First Nations in British Columbia, usually in the collaborative project context. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Curtis. We will continue. So next up, we have newly elected to the FSIN, and he's not not shy with the politics. He's been around a few times. I'd like to call up FSIN Vice Chief Fabian Head.
Good morning. Tit now, tamskat now. Anuch mga gisagag, ni ganut te na nas kumao, hayo mamitawi mau, umagisagag amigo ag, nutre na nas kumao, hayo senator, kapipas kiti na gumurta mamo pin. Minagagi kit tamskat na kewa na pe usko kiti gutgaya yuk. Tena nas kumao iste tagsig hayo miti president tutawista anu tagmina. Nas kumao go hayo board utagapit wista wow. I have Fabian Head Sigason, Miguskwaga, Kaskiutinia, Treaty 5 territory. So with that, good morning. I'd like to first and foremost acknowledge our Creator for this day that He has given us. I'd like to thank the Senator for the opening prayer this morning as we proceed with the association meeting here today. I'm honored to be here standing in front of you as the newly elected third Vice Chief of the Federation. As I mentioned, that I come from the Red Earth Cree Nation, Treaty 5 territory as well. I'm thankful that our Eastern Sector brothers are here hosting this forum, and also acknowledge our Woodland brothers that are here as well, in Nasquamog, and of course the Métis President as well, Glenn as well. So I'm a little bit sore from last night's game, and we had a charity game last night between the Cholet Cree Nation and the PAGC Chiefs, and my opponent was the Métis president there, and that one shift we had, I kind of took him out towards the corner there by the boards, and I think I almost retired him. So he's keeping his distance away from me this morning, and I'm also be thankful to be here on this important dialogue that we're having here on the Trappers Association and their vision and their mandate. And that mandate is simple. That mandate is exercising its inherent right to trap, hunt, and fish and gather on our ancestral traditional lands. And that's exactly what they're doing. I'd like to acknowledge, of course, Chief Rennie Saboyer and the council as well from Cumberland House, providing that support as well, and FSIN will also be providing that support. We have to realize and educate our youth as well. I see some youth here today, and that's very beautiful to see our youth here today. We have to continue to remind our people, the federal government, the provincial governments, we have to change that narrative with them. They have to change that narrative. And that narrative is they need to recognize that we are here first, that we are sovereign nations. Any nations that have signed treaty with Great Britain and Ireland means that we're here first. And that's an inherent right to govern ourselves. Mantu gimiwag mawiswin kawiswat disuag at pimsuag kapamitago askia. Higoma the inherent right to govern ourselves. You know, I learned an analogy from one of our senators back home in our neighboring community, Shoal Lake. He has an analogy where there's two canoes, and that canoe, those two canoes, we on this side of the river, we will govern our people accordingly. You, the federal government, the provincial government, the Queen and Crown, you govern your people on that side of the river. From time to time, we'll come together and meet in that river, middle of the river, and work together. However, for the last 150 years, it's only been one side that's been unilaterally profiting off the resources off the land. And I'm glad that the FSIN has brought forth that statement of challenge to challenge the province on the NRTA. As we know, the NRTA was done unlawfully without our free informed prior consent. And we know that NRTA took 10 years to create between the feds and the province. That's something that the FSI is working on to continue to challenge and revoke that NRTA. And that revocation has been taken to the FN as well recently, back in August as well, to challenge that. And that's a very important stance that we're taking at FSIN. Like I said, the NRTA should have never happened without our free informed consent. because it violates your Aboriginal right, your inherent, not even Aboriginal right. Aboriginal right comes from the Section 35, but before that, we were sovereign nations. We didn't have to have any rights because they were God-given rights that the Creator gave us to trap, hunt, and fish because that's our livelihood. So I bring that support to this table as well. I thank Barry and Dwayne for inviting me here as well, and also like to thank them that they're here with us and surviving that almost alien abduction that they encountered there recently. But in all fairness, it's very important that we maintain our way of life. I'm an avid hunter myself. I was on the verge of learning how to become a trapper. My best friend had passed away in summer, Mr. Wilson Mackay. That summer he passed away. We had talked about chipping in for a skidoo, a snowmobile. We're going to go half and half on that. He said, counselor, I was a counselor at the time for my nation. Counselor, I'm going to take you out on the land. I'm going to show you how to trap. He said, because he learned from one of the best trappers that we had of the day at that time. And I was so eager to learn. I was getting ready as well until I heard that terrible news that one summer that he had suddenly passed away. But I do exercise my right to hunting, fishing as well. And that's very important to do and educate our youth because that's our way of life. That's who we are, Neowak. You are Neowak, you are Dene, Métis. That's our God-given right to identify ourselves and call ourselves, whatever we call ourselves, identify ourselves as. It's important going forward that you begin to develop your declarations on your land. Declare those minerals, those rights that are on your lands as your own through your indigenous documents. Create those documents according to your languages, in your languages, to assert your jurisdiction that way and to protect your lands. So I'm very passionate about that as well. And I'm just honored to be here, and I don't want to take too much time to speak here today, but I do bring greetings on behalf of the Federation, on behalf of my colleagues as well. Chief Bobby Cameron was scheduled to be here as well, but he had to attend another function as well that required him to be there as well. And they do send their greetings as well as we approach the Christmas season. Take the time to be with your families and also pray for our loved ones that have lost a family as well during this time. We're going through a lot of losses in our nations with our elders as well have been passing away. So with that, ayok naskup now tamskat tagog and we at the FSI are aware that trap lines are being disrupted by the corporation, by of course the province continuing to allow those permits to be issued, and that we're keeping track of that as well at the FSI. And so I would say hagitong na naskup now matlugas tumago hi.
Thank you, Chief Fabian Ed. Well, the next one I want to introduce is my good friend, President Glenn McCollum. Like I said, Glenn and I met at the golf course, and that's how everything started. So, Glenn, as you come up here, and thank you for coming down, sir.
Hi. Good morning, everyone. Mios nan sumutagawas kapiak. Igawin tohtatuak. Tan sitigi situs katuak kaywak. Be able to be here and support one another. But it's always nice to be able to have our elders do the opening prayer and start in a good way. Guys, I am hot. No, so simanan di tawagan. I am hot this morning. Igwayamo tak pisiski isak the animals. Igwa said thanks to Migia, our creator. Kamiguya kagunanhe. Much soon, life igimiguya in the old days, agiapits and still today. A lot of presenters here today in regards to some different parts of the concerns we may have, interests we may have. But at the end of the day, no matter how much we discuss the UN Declaration or Section 35 rights, we have to start recognizing that we're in it together, Métis and First Nations in this province. I've tried so hard in the 7.5 years that I've been here as the president. Pues niguchihtan tagwi papit tago isin wag tayo mahago to be able to speak to the First Nations, the leadership. Prince Albert Grand Council has been very open. Brian Hardlaw, the conversations. And you know, when we sit here, even the consultant writing down First Nations only, we disrespect ourselves by not putting Métis and First Nations or First Nations and Métis. You know, as I stand here today with my wife, we have 9 grandchildren. We have them in Muskeg Lake, Mistawasis, Canoe Lake, Indian Band, and Larange Indian Band. I will never forget my grandchildren. And if we look back in our history, in regards to the first people and the explorers that came, it took the Métis and First Nations and Métis to be able to work together, to be able to have them survive in our land. Think about that. And yet, we talk in separation, in isolation, I should say. We got to bring it together. You know, through sports, I play a lot of golf. I still play hockey. But I don't want to play against the Chief again because he's rough, rough player. Just kidding. First time I met him, we had a lot of fun. And ball. All of you, if you look at yourselves, the politics was always over there. And our camaraderie and partnership has always been on the ice, on the ball field, and on the golf course. That's how I got to meet and notice him. You know, Chief Marcel, on the golf course, where we get to spend time to be able to talk about ourselves, to talk about our families. And so when I look at the UN Declaration, it's a floating document. It doesn't mean anything if you don't have something on the ground. If you don't assert your right as Métis and First Nations, what do we have? Is that document going to carry the day? Not at all. It takes governments, and I'm glad, Chaboyer, in regards to your comments regarding separating from MINAC, to be able to assert your right as the chief and your members. That's beautiful to hear. That's beautiful. That's what we do. The Métis Nation, we were dysfunctional. Nothing was going on. People stuffing their pockets, stealing from our nation. And we're live. They should hear. People should start hearing these things. In regards to the struggles that we have to build solid foundations for our governments, a solid foundations with our citizens, so they can believe that they can look up to us and they be able to see the benefits that they can get. Where Section 35 writes, the government owes us that. When people talk about reconciliation, reconciliation comes from each individual. I've been in residential school. My dad, my mother. I've been sexually abused, physically abused, and abandoned, neglected, alcohol violence in my home, my mom getting evicted. So that's the story we can all tell. But when people talk about reconciliation pie up in the sky somewhere and not get down to the ground of what really is happening, it's up to us to be able to reconcile our thoughts and feelings in regards to what are we going to do, how are we going to speak. Only then can we have that voice. Because the government has an obligation. They have a terrible record, the federal government and province, in regards to the well-being of our people. So it's up to us to be able to change that by communicating, cooperating, planning, and planning together, strategizing together. You know, when we talk about the province, it has a role, sure, but it doesn't really respect. I get along with Mo. I went playing golf with him last year, 4.5 hours on the golf course. I tried to develop a relationship with him. I got his personal cell phone, but I need to do something with our Métis Nation and our First Nations people to be able to argue the point of where they're missing the point of working with us as Indigenous governments. And I'll never shy away from saying it to anyone. You know, sometimes we're labeled in a bad way, that taxpayers' dollars of Canada. Well, it's our dollars too. We have a role and responsibility to our people. When we talk about equity, positions in companies. You know, the duty to consult and accommodate, we took the province to court. We won that case in Supreme Court. We had a hearing 3 weeks ago, a month ago, we had a hearing. I believe we're going to win that case, and the First Nations and Inuit people are going to benefit from that ruling when it comes down, and hopefully it's in early March sometime that it's going to come down. We'll all be winners. But if we don't talk and communicate, that the consultant writes down, where is that partnership within the wording? When we talk about proponents, when we talk about how they should impact or be able to be partners with our Indigenous communities. See, that word Indigenous doesn't qualify, really. It's just a generalization of Indigenous people, and federal governments use that in provincial governments to get away from actually speaking about First Nations and Métis concerns. We got to change that. The language has to change. I remember the first time I got in, there was a presentation done, and all of a sudden it says Métis, and then comparison to the First Nations, what you have, and then becomes a battle in the statements that they make. And I said, stop. No more. Take every First Nation that's written on that document, on that presentation. I don't want to hear it anymore. And we did. We only talk about ourselves in regards to how we can help ourselves. But we can't do it alone. We have to create one voice. We have to create a strong voice. For the best interest, I'll use Indigenous this time. For Indigenous people in Saskatchewan, Métis and First Nation, or First Nations and Métis. Even that, sometimes people will get flustered a bit because why did you use Métis first instead of First Nation? Well, does it really matter? Because when you talk about what this person talks about today, it's good. It's a good conversation. Where's the evidence? We're here sitting down and coming to a conference on trapping. The trappers, there's not very many. I'm a trapper myself, commercial fisherman. There's not very many trappers in this room. There's a few from north, central, and south. More so probably in the north. But what are we going to do to support them? I've been talking to Barry and his committee in regards to what my thoughts are. My wife sits here. My wife spends $100,000 a year on buying crafts from Métis and First Nations and Métis. She does that on her own. And we give gifts. We just gave one to the elected individual here, La Liberty from Beauval. My wife, our people have been neglected. Now they're starting to find the spirit, their true Métis spirit, to be a part of something. Our members, our citizens are happy that we're winning now. And I want to win with First Nations and Métis in regards to what we do, because right now we're opening an office in Ottawa. We have a place already. Hopefully in the new year, it'll be open. My wife is going to lead with our economic development arm to be able to support our First Nations craftspeople. And the majority of the money that she spends are on First Nation. I have 3 sets of fur gloves. The ones I wear, minus 24. But when it comes to minus 30, 51 last year at one day, I wore those Wolverine gloves that come from Cumberland House. Ryan gave them to me. And they're very warm gloves. You know, when I promote, I wear every meeting that I go to. I wear the things that my wife buys from the craftspeople. We got to start doing that. The suits have to be left on the side. We got to start promoting our culture, like that nice jacket that person is wearing over there. A beautiful jacket. Thank you. Give him a hand. Yeah. Those are the things that are important right there. Look at that. Beautiful. Look at that. Wonderful jacket. I got 3 jackets like that. As a young boy, when I was growing up with my father on the trap line, I've always wanted a buckskin jacket. Without the fringes, but just a pullover jacket, and I got it. And I'm so proud of that. You know, every year when I go to functions, I wear it. And it's beautiful to see. So we're going to buy crafts. Every year I'm going to involve, hopefully, the committee, Barry and this committee. What can we do? Wayne Smagan is out of North Battleford. There's a processing plant over there for fur. Why don't we come together and to be able to strategize? Because, it's hard, yourselves, in regards to where you're going to sell your fur. You have to count on somebody else creating that market for you, for us, I should say, for our trappers. And sometimes we fall short. And imagine the amount of time the chief was talking about buying a skidoo. That's a $14,000 equipment, or more than that sometimes. Then you think about the gas, you think about the traps, you think about the travel, the amount of time to setting the traps, and taking the time to be able to go check your traps. And all of a sudden you come back, you sell your muskrat for $1.50, $2. Holy shit. How's that going to cover your cost? The gloves that I have can easily be sold for $5,000. The Wolverine, we paid $2,500. They can easily be sold for anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000. Easy. But we have to find a market. They're not properly represented. In Ottawa, when we do that, we're going to sell at a high price. But we're not going to take it away from the craftspeople. As we begin to build the market, create that interest, they're going to get what they should be. They deserve. Knitting, how long does it take from the time you take it away out from a trap to be able to dry, to be able to have it ready for craftspeople to have? That's a long process. And at the end of the day, craftspeople are selling minimal in regards to what they're getting. That's got to stop. So I am proposing, we're planning as a Métis Nation, but I want the First Nations to come along with us. Yes, we've given money to the community and we'll continue to give. The support needs to be there. Chief, thank you for that, for all the years that you've supported them. And we've done so ourselves. But the word has to be not Indigenous. First Nations and Métis were relatives. Man, we got to wake up, man, to the fact that we have the same interest. If you take Pine House, 99% of our people were caught up in alcohol, including me and my wife. The things that have happened through generational effects of residential schools, foster homes, 60 schools, high rate of incarceration, gangs, alcohol, drugs, violence. Think about that. Every one of us here has been affected by that. My dad died of alcohol. My niece died of alcohol at the age of 24. We're affected by it, but we don't get together to be able to plan. When people say impact communities, do you realize that Pine House, the drinking capital of the North, you can still see it on CBC if you go there. And now we have a company worth close to $30 million that we're on our own self-sufficient. It's beautiful to see. That's what we have to do with the fur industry. Right now, we're working with Prince Albert Grand Council. Hopefully, Meadow Lake will come on side, working with the chief from Manitoba on freshwater. Now, the federal government is looking at opening the door to stop the monopoly on freshwater fish. Now we have a proposal going between Manitoba and Saskatchewan, Métis and First Nations fishermen, or First Nations and Métis fishermen, so nobody gets away, or somebody listening in saying Métis first or First Nations first. I'll practice saying backwards and the other way around so that people don't get the wrong idea that I'm only pushing Métis. I'm pushing families, I'm pushing communities, I'm pushing us as a people, that we do have that voice. And when we come together, when we went to a meeting in Ottawa with Hardlon and a few other chiefs, the government, it's music to our ears to be able to hear two nations coming together, to be able to formalize a plan on freshwater marketing. It's beautiful. We have so many stuff happening that are successful in our communities, but we fail to recognize that we're related. Mapping, land use studies, sustenance use studies. We've done that in Pine House. But there's no way that we want to infringe on somebody else's rights or territory or jurisdiction. But we have to communicate. If we don't communicate, and if we don't share our ideas, we'll be our worst enemy. And then the federal or provincial government say, well, let him fight. Well, I don't want that. I want us to create that voice for the trappers, for the fishermen, for the rights of our people and the impact industry has had in our territories. Only then can we begin to move forward. in a good way and not isolate one or the other. That strong argument around impact. The governments have an obligation to us as Indigenous people to be able to create and go along with the ideas that we have. Even now, we're talking about Pine House. The First Nations, there's about 700, there's 1,500 strong in my community. There's about 700 First Nation. We don't put them on the side. Everybody works together. We don't have a reserve. We've always lived together. We're happy. But I wish other communities, jurisdictions would do the same, to be able to embrace each other. The things of the past where we didn't get along, not very long ago. It's only when alcohol and other things became a factor to who we are as people. You know, I remember in my community of Pine House, the McIntyres out of Pachinak, which is about 60 air miles, and then the Marasti family, which is about another 60 air miles from Mile Across to Pine House, and then the Ross family, which is another 60 air miles in La Ronge. They all came together with the Natamogans, the Red Irons, the Rivieres, the DeRochers. They got along, the McCallums from Beauval, which my dad was a part of that. They got along. I remember many times when they got to meet on the south side of the lake and to be able to plan out the trapping season. And they would designate certain areas for them to trap. They got along until the zones came in. Even now today in our communities, you will see people fighting over their little territories. What are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. Our own people, our own family members. It's crazy. That has to stop. Let alone from our own communities in regards to the jurisdiction, that zones that we have created by the province. Why don't we create our own space? Why don't we add a voice to that space based on relations, partnership, growth? If we want to continue doing that, let's go back home then. Trap in our own little spaces and depend on somebody else to be able to find a market for us. We're not going to do that. That's why Barry and his team have committed so much time to be able to fix the organization they represent, the Trappers Association, and to be able to have the leaders support that organization so we can plan with them. We're planning. I'm going to start talking to the chief in regards to what we're doing in Ottawa and start identifying. I hope we signed an MOU, citizenship agreement. We're teaching governance at the university, Métis governance, and we just signed a research agreement. Why don't we tap into that? We have every right to be able to capitalize on the hundreds of millions of dollars that are going to universities. And they do sporadic research and they become the experts in regards to what's happened. What about the elders? They're our experts. They're the ones that know what's going on. Even fishing. In regards to the healthy lakes that we have. And we still have laws of the old days dictating in regards to what we can take or not take. That has to stop. We got to come together and be able to plan and have a strong discussion and plan to be able to tell others that our voice matters. Our voice matters. So when I look at the trappers, we have to build together. And I'm willing to do that, commit the Métis Nation. And we've been doing that. My wife, with all the connections that she has, how do we connect the trappers to a factory and to the craftspeople and to the marketing? If we put our heads together and put resources together and not always depend on government, yes, we can work together and do a proposal. But we have the means right now, if we put it together, a plan together, to be able to do the things that we want to do. So people can quit talking about the UN declaration. Until we have substance, when the government signed on to the UN declaration, we can use that as a yardstick like they used to do in residential schools and slap them over the hand and say, you're not listening. Here's our plan. Here's our vision. You signed on to the UN declaration to support Indigenous governments. Well, if you look at it really, where? There's so much policy and red tape. But that assertive style that we need to have as First Nations and Métis has to be clear and loud. And it has to start now. It's got to be now. So I am in it for the long run, for the long haul. Let's plan together. Let's go back and tell our leaders and go back to our communities that in order for us to survive and be well on our way to self-sufficiency is to be able to work together, plan together, and have that one strong voice. And I'll back up Barry and what he's doing. We'll develop our plan, but I want it to come together. I want it to come from your table. I wanted it to be your plan so that we can bring other players. I believe the agenda item should be the next time is marketing and really talking about the fur trade on marketing. That's what we got to be doing. Maybe we should have the freshwater people, the fishermen, Métis and First Nations and Métis, to be able to come to the table and say, what have you done? Can you support us? Because they got a proposal already. They're going to be presenting it. The Warrior sits on that committee, say with his dad. That's your dad, right? He sits on the table. We had a very good meeting with Manitoba Chiefs, and we're going to continue doing that. And but we got to do it here too. We got to come together. We got to have the fishermen here and to guide us along in regards to they're getting dollars. Let's put a proposal together, but not one entity of the indigenous community in Saskatchewan. Métis and First Nations and Métis have to come together. The leadership has to come together, but behind Barry and your committee in regards to what we can do and what we have to do. We're obligated to do that. Otherwise, we're not going to get anywhere. So for me, I'm all in. And I look forward to the planning. The agenda you have, but make it very focused agenda next time. That we're talking about marketing, we're talking about development. How can we complement the trappers? But we're doing our part. We'll continue doing our part. And I'm so glad. The Dene people, the Cree people, Kaya Chaguta, Kaya Mamopia, getting together like this. These are the kind of conversations we need to have. We can have these comments made up here. No matter what you talk about, it has to come to this level. Our voice is important, and the planning is important. That can affect, if you brought in the fishermen and the trappers together and governments together, can you imagine how quickly more, that bigger voice, stronger voice? I have a picture here just to show you an example in regards to how complacent the outside world can be sometimes. There was a sign put up, "Welcome to Treaty Number 5 territory, ancestral lands of Cumberland House, Cree Nation. Alongside it, it has homeland of the Métis Nation." When that first sign was set up, outside, just on the fringe of your territory, it was taken down shortly after that, vandalized. He gave me a call. What can we do? Well, let's put it together. Let's put our two signs together. Just those signs alone tells something to the rest of the world. Because if somebody had vandalized it, I would have spoke up. But nobody has ever taken down those signs yet. Doesn't that tell us something? Maybe some people will drive by and say, what the hell does this mean? Well, the sign is not actually telling you anything. It's actually a symbol of something. What is that symbol? Cooperation, family relations. The Cumberland House, Métis and First Nations and Métis have lived there for years, 150 years, and shared that land. Until the politics and the zones and the policies of the federal and provincial governments separated you. That didn't happen to us because we don't have no reserve. We continue to grow strong as families, First Nations and Métis in my community. And that's why we have the spirit of cooperation, and we all have to have that spirit of cooperation. We need it, we have to have it to survive the right way and to be able to create that strong voice for us in the interest within our each jurisdiction. With that, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Métis Nation, thank you very much this morning.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Those are very encouraging words, like always. You know, and I guess we'll are you guys kind of tired? You guys want to go for a little break? But before we go, I want to get our newly elected Leroy to speak a little bit. Thank you, Leroy.
You.
Yeah.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Tanse. I'm really thankful to be here. Thank you, Dwayne. Dwayne invited me here a little while back, and I knew I had it in the schedule. I told him I was going to be here. I think he was kind of unsure about it here a little bit earlier. I want to say thank you to, we call Verna the First Lady for this beaded thing that she had given me. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you to Vice Chief for being here. It's really important for us to be able to be here to support each other. For those that don't know who I am, my name's Leroy LaLiberty. I'm newly elected MLA for Athabasca, so I'm really thankful and happy to be here. I got in a little late, and I seen that the lawyer was had something on the screen here speaking about duty to consult. And I tell you right now, there's still some work to be done when it comes to that process, because if, speaking to a few guys from here, and then obviously having a conversation with a lot of people in the riding of Athabasca and throughout the north, people like my buddy Skip Mongrant, who's not here right now, but called me from La Loche. If duty to consult was happening and accommodating, then everybody in this room right now would be on the same page. And this is something that's not happening. Everybody's starting to see that and has been seeing it for a long time. Do you guys agree? There's still some work to be done, right? I want to say thank you to Barry and Dwayne for organizing something, because this is a start. This is where it starts. And, as Glenn was saying, that, for us there was a lot of division created between both the Métis and the First Nation communities. I was given the opportunity to play a role at the provincial level, to be able to be a shadow minister to both Métis and First Nation relations. So my responsibility is to get rid of that gap, for us to develop these relationships with, the First Nations and the Métis Nation. But like Glenn was saying, we're all one people, we're all Indigenous. I want to acknowledge my Uncle Rick at the back. He's sitting here. He's the mayor of Beauval now, and he was also a member of Parliament for this Nethey Churchill River, and he's seen firsthand when he was advocating for our people in the north where that division started at a federal level. So having these types of people in this place to be able to sit down, to meet, to have conversation about the needs of, and you guys are going to understand those needs more than anybody else. I want to acknowledge my friend Wanda, my sis, and her partner, her husband, and these three are RCMP members. A lot of you don't know that Wanda actually grew up on the land. Wanda, take a stand. If you look at her, you'll be like, nah, she didn't. But I tell you, she knows how to hunt, trap, fish, and all of that stuff. And, it's nice to have people from different parts of the province to be here to support you. So my responsibility is to advocate on your behalf at a provincial level, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm happy to be here, to be able to sit down with other representation from around the province. We're all here to support you. And like Glenn says, I'm all in. I'm all ears, and my responsibility is to take these conversations to the legislature in Regina and to advocate on your behalf. That's what my responsibility is. I want to send my regrets from that he couldn't be here. The elected MLA for Cumberland, Jordan McPhail, he couldn't be here today. He had some responsibility back home. But there's a lot of people that are pushing to have your voices heard. I could tell you that. I could guarantee it. And the old reason why I decided that I wanted to run in Athabasca is because I'm from the north. I'm from Beauval. I want to be able to give you guys that voice at the provincial level. I'm a very vocal person. I worked in community development, community outreach, youth outreach for 25 years all over this country. And I've met with people like yourselves all over the place, from teaching staff to health staff. I collaborated with them. And one of the things that was said on, regardless of your political views, one of the things that was said on throughout our campaign, and it was on the billboard, it was at the bottom, is that we're stronger together. And that's something that you guys need to know. We are stronger together. And enough with that separation. We need to be able to work together to be able to have our voices heard, both provincially and federally. So, I want to say thank you to Glenn, because, they're really advocating for our people, and they're pushing very hard, both at the provincial and federal level. And, a lot of people say, well, I don't agree with, a lot of things that are done politically. People have their political views, but at the end of the day, we do a lot of this stuff because we're thinking about the next generation. I'm thinking about my kids. I'm thinking about my wife. I'm thinking that one day down the road, maybe I'll have grandchildren that's going to want to live off the land. But what's going to happen when we don't have that land anymore? Because you guys are seeing it firsthand that the government's taking a lot of resources out of our land, but there's no services. There's nothing being given back to our communities. So this is a start, and I'd had a conversation with Barry, that he had to throw his own money in to have this event, because he really cares about what's going on in the North. There's a lot of people that aren't here today, but they were advocating for the North. There's a lot of people that we remember that trapped, that hunted, that fished up on our land. They're not here today. So we have to do right by them. I want to say thank you to obviously I missed the prayers this morning. I was always told by my cookums that it was important to start our days with prayer. And traveling up this morning, and it kind of gave me that memory of my late father-in-law, Howard Cameron. He was from Beardy's and Okamasis First Nation, a well-respected elder, very traditional. And I tell you, he sure knew how to put people in their place. And he was also a retired RCMP member. And one of the things that he had said, I remember I was in my travels, I was traveling all over the place. And I said, how do you know when a person is doing right? How do you know when a person is doing right by their own? He said, sometimes you travel around, have you been getting these gifts? I said, well, yeah, I've been, people have been giving me a mug, giving me a cup, or something to take home, as a part of the conference. He said, that's not the kind of gifts I'm talking about. He said, I'm talking about the gifts that people worked really hard to put together, like this thing that I was given today. These are the kinds of things that matter. When our people work really hard, I had met some cookums still in their 90s that are still, putting together moccasins and different things like that. And I said, well, I haven't received anything like that yet. And this was a few years back. And then shortly after he had passed, I was really thankful. I was on the eastern part of the country, and I remember being given an eagle feather that was beaded. And then, then I got another one. Then I got these blankets, and then I was given a smudge bowl. I was given sage. I was given all of these things that our people were giving me as a part of respect. That's the way we did that's the way it was done. So I totally understand where he was coming from with all of that stuff. And that's when I knew I was on the right path. Because I was given these gifts from different cookums and mushums and tsapans and community members from all over. But I totally agree with Glenn, and I agree with our vice chief at FSIN, is that we got to work together. That's what I said. I said that right from the start. We're stronger together. That's the way that it's got to be. Everybody here, your voice matters. You're important. You belong. And when we're meeting at those tables with these representatives from all over the province. I never ever forget where I come from. I always tell people I'm from northern Saskatchewan. No matter where I was in Canada, I'm from the heart of Canada. That's northern Saskatchewan. And so know that you have my full support, and I'm going to advocate on your behalf. But I'm not going to know a lot of the issues that are going here. That's why I'm here, is to be able to have that conversation so that way I could advocate for you guys properly at the provincial level, to give you that voice there. But we're not going to get anywhere with division. We have responsibility to our people, responsibility to our lands, our waters, protection to those. We have responsibility to our kids, to our grandkids. It's not going to happen with division. So with that, I want to say thank you again, Dwayne and Barry. You guys, give these guys a big round of applause and their committee for organizing this event. And for having me here and inviting me. I'm going to be here for a little bit. I have to attend another meeting in Saskatoon, but I'm really happy to have made it here to be here with you guys. I'll leave my number with Dwayne or Barry. If you guys need to get in touch with me in any way, please don't hesitate. I'm not one of those ones that say, here's my number, and then I never call you back. I'll get there. That's what I've been doing for the past little bit here. People said, I was here listening to that when I was campaigning. I would try to get a hold of different people. He never called me back, but I do. Might be a week later, and then you'll be like, well, who's this? Well, you left a voicemail. I'll get in touch with you eventually, okay? So with that, thank you very much. You guys, I'm really proud that you guys are getting organized like this. This is a step in the right direction, but there's a lot of work to be done yet. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Leroy. I just want to make a quick motion here, and I'll get Dwayne to get started here, so because our lawyer has to step out.
All right. Thank you very much. A lot of great, strong messages from a lot of great leaders there. But our lawyer does have to take off. He doesn't run on Indian time, but we all do. So let's make a motion in order for him to join our association. Curtis, anybody from our committee want to make a motion for him to join the Indigenous Harvesters? Name? Mike? Seconder, please. Riley, Coolinair back there. All in favor? Thank you. Abstains? No? Thanks. We will take a motion carried. We will take a short break. I know we've been sitting for a while, and enjoy each other, visit. We will return for more.
Testing 1, 2. All right, you guys. If you're just tuning in, we are on a little break right now. You're watching the Indigenous AGM here for the Indigenous Harvester's Association. We're live in PA at the moment. Live all day. Right till the end. And then we're going to have Chiboy Iron come on here. He's going to chit chat with everybody and maybe do some interviews. And then after the break, I think they'll continue on for about another hour or so. 11:30, maybe they're gonna do lunch here soon. So after when we hit lunch, we'll probably end it and then go live again on the break. But we're gonna bring Chiboy on here right away. Not sure where he's going. He's just gonna let me know, and then yeah, we're gonna go on him for a bit. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. The Indigenous Association.
Yeah, all right. Well, nagutahutan na yapinan mahmiuhtauk swak this morning gunuga pahpik chigwista Glenn McCallum gutta Métis Nation of Saskatchewan government but ahtakakihtauk swag Leroy Liberty politicians maga kois we wichihta swaguta guma Indigenous Harvester's Association Barry Carrier yagwana na the president uta so takakihtauk swag lawyer na minagipik school Curtis Harms kipihtaw twi IOP say siguro magapmuhtatake guma at simon ya smagan si what to skiw nik mi no o geg taneso squad pakigno muy pakigno skesena as sagwo gego taminam tane unagagi mixi kachigito tam taneso squad tanega gwage miona wana opportunity kitaba tina wa and madi camera ayota astesa ota so uno minigya hay mutako kakiugi go magatis pakiginoke kapu minagaw sihtak pakiginoske sena pakiginocha pumskotaga yo henana toksi sigi goya ya got time to ni mio sikta mama watos ke gotti so he negati ge machi un paktawa un egoaste yago mo pahigi uno mo wani higi un ya nana to hanak sekati no no chigi una titani sekata mokso pia wani it's all about trapping. Retired Staff Sergeant Brian Kelly o tamina pia puta gosuigi maga no ta sa seki yakipahpihtawa no Wanda Mackenzie wistegis magan siwat to skite go ya matisa ya awo tigi no tia we I saw she's kind of in a rush Wanda but at least Wanda say good morning kya pichu magigsipa what time is it 11:30 mo sapiak sapi na pihtote pagan ya ni hiawi so Wanda igos ya tumustaw we tamunan about retired Staff Sergeant Brian at Peace Squad Town siya.
Igo sa tini ay kiksipa naman kagipi mamawapiak igo ay Indigenous policing machigatos igo that September retired igo the Sergeant Nathan Van Wista Sakura Veroche igo tagitap mego Ashley Carlson Lands and Resources Larange Bandoche.
Yeah, so tan saya kista ya tan sigi sinak skawat sugo ni tiga ya hatuskin siya.
Misuita pamatos kan oto kaya so suichatos kimago. Ni puita pamatos kya. Ego ay nis nanat trappers ntaksona no tigiwit no nit nani the N8. What's your trappers? N7 we sta Nathan we sta trappers. Ego we sta man might be mama bichig with inoti Inortin stohtako, inorti skiditako, tan sigis padigivit no kominni do tan sigitigi siwichi hako nisnan.
Right on, thank you. Well, Staff Sergeant or retired Staff Sergeant Brian, ati sa wiste when you go with yeah, trapping is a guy so mutoma. And if you're a trapper or in getting involved in siso mapagwatsay tahayain, well, yeah, so me also no pick. You heard some of our politicians spoke here already this morning. What message did they give, and was it pretty good message for you?
Yeah, I felt that there's some really good speakers today, and they spoke about things that I think have been looming in the background for years now with Indigenous rights, Métis and First Nation rights, the natural resources and protecting the natural resources. These are all things that haven't taken front stage in many years for First Nations and Métis, and I think it's important for the voices to be heard and recognition by the governments that they and we, I guess, have those rights, and right to consult is managed a lot better.
You had some relatives out there back in La Ronge that were also involved in trapping, and yeah, you must have had a little bit of support from them in the past.
Yeah, my Mushroom and Kokum, Marianne, and John Mackay, they were really significant growing up, making us bows and arrows and teaching us about snaring and living on the trap line. It was a very big part of my childhood, and after 28 years of being in the RCMP, I'm happy to be able to devote more time to our trap line, and learning also from my cousin John Hubdebo. He was taught directly from my Mushroom and Kokum, all the ninja trapping skills, I'll say, and he's been passing those on to me in recent years as well.
So that's been quite a while now. Is this the first time you've been in this, something like this in a while? I did anyways. The last time I went was in La Ronge. That was quite a few years back.
Yes, this is my first AGM. I'm now the chair of N8, but my mom and aunt used to come down to these in the past, and my uncles and Mushroom and Kokum, they all used to come to these in the past.
Right on. Okay, well, thank you for doing this.
Tinigi pwede ko.
Okay, well, miyasin na yung ano kumahamis ko si Big Squata. Kumati sa tama, unto tawata na kay Kota.
Hello? So we are going to make a resolution. I believe President of Métis Nation, Glenn McCallum, is going to make a resolution.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I can have your attention, please, just for a while. Well, there's still lots of us here. Some have to travel. The chiefs have to get going here too. They will have other business. We talked about trapping. We talked about culture. We talked about the crafts that our people are making. Like I mentioned, my wife dealing with 10 craftspeople in Saskatchewan, North, Central, and South. We've been buying, like I said, we bought probably $100,000 worth of crafts every year. We do that. And the people that are there that have that the traditional stuff, we're going to involve them. It doesn't, non-Indigenous people. I was just talking to him in regards to a beautiful jacket that he's got, and he's non-Indigenous. Well, you don't have to be. We have to work together. We have to recognize the fact that interrelations, marriages are happening between Métis, First Nations, non-Indigenous, whatever. That's what's happening in our world. Once we get to that point of embracing one another, and I was just talking to a gentleman from South End who's married to a First Nations woman. All of a sudden, if we mention Métis or First Nations Métis, and all of a sudden he's different from his wife and his family, we totally disregard sometimes and disrespect that. We can't keep doing that. We gotta rise above that and to be able to embrace each other. So the resolution that I would like to see today, and the chiefs agree, in regards to, let's start promoting the crafts that our people are making. Let's do a resolution that we'll try, and and we'll keep reminding, the committee will keep reminding the importance of promoting the crafts and our people that are doing the crafts. Maybe next year we'll have people here. Hopefully our office is open in Ottawa, see what kind of headway we're making in regards to selling crafts in Ottawa. That office that we have is a high traffic area, and I hope we can pull it off in regards to supporting our craftspeople here. But us all of here, just by buying a pair of gloves, a vest, or something, you're helping those craftspeople like we're doing. And let's keep doing it. Let's promote. And I guarantee you, if all of us were dressed traditionally and we walk these streets like I do, you know, people just, that's beautiful. I walk 5 kilometers a day in Saskatoon. I met this old lady with a little dog. Those must be warm. I said, yes. Do you want my number? You know, my son has to have his his hand hard for him to warm it up. These are the perfect gloves for him. So that lady, non-Indigenous lady, was very interested in what I was wearing. If I hadn't worn them walking around, people won't notice. We have to promote that way so people will notice that these crafts are important to us and important to the people that make them and the trappers that go trapping for the furs. So if we create that industry ourselves, we'll be winners. But we have to be patient. But we have to come together and plan together. So that resolution is all about what I said. So how does it read? I'll be moving that resolution. Seconder, Chief from Cumberland House, Boyer. So with that, I'll turn it over to the chair. And all in favor, please.
All in favor?
Unanimous.
Unanimously, yep. Motion
Thank you,
carried.
everyone. That's the first one. That's the first one.
Thank you, Glenn.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll continue with our short break and then I guess
We'll be serving lunch.
we will be serving lunch here pretty soon.
Yep. And we'll come back after.
Yeah, we'll come back after lunch.
So, yep.
Enjoy. Testing.
All right, you guys. What do you want to talk? All right, we're going to shut down the live feed here, and then we'll come back after lunch. We'll see you soon.